Staying hopeful and keeping calm through unprecedented times is what Wisconsinites are doing after Tuesday's election results. Tonight, the state's Attorney General publicly vowed to protect them and their rights. WMTV's Cameron Kelly joins us live in studio. And Cameron, the Attorney General says elections lead to policy changes.
That's right. Today, I met a mixture of folks in the community who have different thoughts on what is next for the country.
Some Wisconsinites are relieved with the outcome of the election, while others like Stacy Benoit feel uncertain about the future.
Definitely, I have some anxieties about my rights, especially as a woman, reproductive rights in particular.
Attorney General Josh Kaul describes politics as fluid.
There's, of course, going to be significant policy change at the federal level. And that's how our system is supposed to work. Elections lead to changes in policy.
Kaul assures all Wisconsinites he will protect them no matter how the laws change.
If the new administration infringes upon the freedoms of Wisconsinites or attempts to use our system of justice as a tool for vengeance, we will act.
Although Benoit feels a whirlwind of emotions, she says it's important to take things one step at a time.
At the same time, don't want to be doomsday, and there are good things that came out of it as well.
She thinks everyone should stand up for what they believe in.
I still have hope at the end of the day.
A top priority of mine at the Department of Justice has been and will remain protecting the rights of Wisconsinites.
Kaul says at the end of the day, lawmakers should push their differences aside to do what's best for Wisconsinites. Live in the studio, Cameron Kelly, WMTV 15 News.